So, let's start with the cervical. Alright, so, you have 3 types of vertebrae in your vertebral column. Okay? You have cervical. Okay? You have to know this, what type of vertebrae this is cervical. If it has 3 holes, it's a cervical. That's what type it is. Does that make sense? And you have 7 of those. And it kind of looks like a fox. The next largest is a thoracic. The thoracic looks like a giraffe. You see the giraffe? Okay. There's 12 of these. You need to know this is the thoracic. You need to know there's 12 of them. And then you have 5 lumbar. Okay. So you eat breakfast at 7 cervical. You eat lunch at 12 thoracic, and you eat dinner at 5. Okay. The lumbar looks like a moose because lumbar jacks would definitely have a pet moose. Right? All of these have certain structures in common. They all have a spinous process, which is like the nose of the animal. They all have a spinous process. They all have a spinous process. Okay. They all have a vertebral foramen. That's where the spinal cord goes. They all have a transverse process. Transverse process is on the side. They all have a body, except for one, and I'll show you that one in a moment. They all have, only cervical have a transverse foramen. The others don't have a transverse foramen. The cervical have 3 holes, they have a transverse foramen. And they all have a superior and inferior articular facet. And this is something you don't have to know, but it's a good safety net. So there's the superior articular facet, and the inferior articular facet is underneath. Inferior, and inferior. And the way it works is that the superior one articulates with the inferior the other, like that. Does that make sense? Okay. Alright. Now, the top 2 cervical vertebrae have special names. The C1 is called the Atlas. It's very recognizable because it doesn't have a body. And just as Atlas held up the world on his shoulders, Atlas holds up your skull. The more curved side is the superior articular facet, flat side is the inferior. Okay? The C2 is called the axis. And just as the world rotates on its axis, your world rotates on its axis. Okay? So if I say, name this vertebrae, it's Atlas. Name this vertebrae, it's axis. The only other structure on here you need to know is the dens. Now, if I say, what type of vertebrae is this? What type of vertebrae is it? Cervical. How many of this type are there? 7. What type of vertebrae is this? Cervical. Cervical. How many of this type are there? 7. Okay? So if I say name the type, these are still cervical, and there's still 7 cervical vertebrae. But this specific vertebra is the axis. This specific one's the axis. I'm sorry. This one's the atlas. This is the axis. Axis. Atlas. Alright. Now, below your L5, below your 5th lumbar vertebrae, which this is probably that one, maybe. No, this one. Okay, below your L5, you don't have to know this is L5, just know it's lumbar. Okay, you need to be able to recognize lumbar for thoracic. Below your L5, you have the sacrum and you have the coccyx. They're 2 separate bones. On the sacral, you have the sacral foramina, and then you have the medial sacral crest. The whole thing is sacrum. You may have to know them separate. This is the sacrum. This is the coccyx. Okay? So just be able to pick up any random one and say, that's a thoracic, and name the parts to it. This is a lumbar, name the parts to it. Okay? Does that make sense? And how many there are of each type. We good? That's how it fits on your back, just like that. This part right here is your shoulder joint, so it has to go to the outside.
Is that the AC joint?
Exactly. And that's the acromion process and coracoid process, which are safety questions, which means you don't have to know them, but it'll help replace one you might miss. Acromion process, coracoid process, glenoid fossa, scapular spine. Okay? Right, left. The right and left ones make great right and left bat ears. Okay? Don't turn them over because you'll look like Dobby. I got a little smile out of it.
That was a good one.
Come on now, you don't look like Dobby.
Is that the guy from Lord of the Rings?
No,
that was Harry
Smeagol.
Potter.
Dobby's from.
That made me cringe. So.
That's from Harry Potter. Dobby's from Harry Potter. Okay. All right. So you got no right and left. Okay. Spine goes to the back. AC joint goes to the outside of where your humerus is. Okay. Left clavicle, right clavicle. Clavicle's easy. Right, left's not so easy. Thick part goes inside. It bows out and bends back toward your shoulder, and the groove goes down. It's a right one. Don't turn it over because it's not concave. Don't turn it over this way because the groove now is going up. You want the groove to go down. That's a right one. That's a left clavicle. Sternum, manubrium, body, xiphoid process. Okay? Ribs, you don't have to identify, you just have to know number. There's 7 pair of true ribs. False ribs, you can either say 3 pair or 5 pair. I will accept either one. Okay? The reason being is because you have 2 pair of floating ribs, which you need to know. 2 pair of floating ribs is often considered false ribs too, so that would make 5 total. 5 pair total.
What are false ribs?
False ribs means they don't have a direct connection to the sternum. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pair of true ribs that have a direct connection to the sternum, and the other 3 connect to each other before going to the sternum. And then you have 2 false ribs that's connected to your T11 and T12, but they don't come all the way around. Okay? Alright. Alright. Right coxa, left coxa. Alright? You have 3 regions to it. This is the ilium. This whole part right here is the ilium. This pointed portion right here is the pubis. We know where that is, down to the front. And this is the ischium. That's what you're sitting on. On the ilium, you have the iliac crest. You have the sacroiliac joint, which is connected to your sacrum. You remember your sacrum? That's what's connected to your sacrum. On the pubis, you have the pubis symphysis, which is where 2 pubic bones connect together. On the ischium, you have your ischial spine and the ischial tuberosity. That's exactly what you're sitting on right now. Alright, this is the obturator foramen. And this right here is the acetabulum. That's where the head of the femur fits. Okay, now, if I put the sacroiliac joint up, there's a perfect notch for my thumb. And this makes a great left cell phone. Now I'm talking to the obturator. And I know this is the left side. The right side makes a good right cell phone. I'm talking to the obturator. Okay? So what's that, left or right?
Left.
That's left, exactly. And you're okay to pick it up and do this when you're in the test. Okay? We good? Alright. You have to know right and left. You have to know that head angles in toward your shoulder, but is it this way or is it this way?
This way.
The distal end has to curve up because that's the way your arm bends. So this is a right, that is a left, okay? And plus the distal end, the one that extends out like this, that's your medial epicondyle, that's that bone right there. Next to your, quote, funny bone. Okay? Alright, now, this is the head. This is the greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, okay? On the distal end, the same side of the head, you have the medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle. 2 safety questions. You have the capitulum, which is on the lateral side. You have the trochlea, which is on the medial side. These 2 indentions, you have the coronoid fossa and the olecranon fossa. Okay, coronoid fossa, olecranon fossa. All right. Okay, the ulna. Somebody give me an ulna.
It has a U at the top. Or yeah.
Oh, I knew what the ulna was. Cause I
Too late.
I need the other one. All right, this is a right ulna. This is a left ulna. I'll show you how you know that in just a minute.
Nice.
The ulna. This makes a U for ulna. This U part is called the semilunar arch because it looks like a half moon, or it's also called the trochlear notch because it connects with the trochlea. Okay.
Is that like the arm that goes right here?
So you could
Yes.
put like either one.
Either one would be okay.
Okay.
And both will be together on the answer bank. Okay?
Okay.
So no, it's not multiple choice that there's an answer bank. Multiple choice, sorry. This right here is the olecranon process, and the olecranon process fits in the olecranon fossa. This is the coronoid process, and it connects to the coronoid fossa. See that?
Mind blown.
All right. Now, down here you have the styloid process. Now, I know this is a right one. Here's how I know this. One of the safety questions is right here. This is a radial notch. Whichever way the radial notch is facing, that's which direction it is. So if I put the styloid process to my pinky, because the ulna is on the pinky side, okay, and I do this palm up, the radial notch is facing right. On this one, the radial notch is facing left, because it has to connect with the radius, which is on the thumb side. So that's a left radius, that's a right radius. Okay? The radius. 3 parts on the radius. The head, radial tuberosity, and styloid process. I think the radial tuberosity is a safety question. What happened to the thing here? Y'all tore it off!
No, we didn't tore it off because I got it right.
Yeah, the radial tuberosity is a safety question. However, that's going to be key knowing right and left too. So you have the head, the radial tuberosity, and the styloid process on there. The styloid process goes to my thumb, okay, and the radial notch is up. The radial tuberosity is up, so that's my left. So it fits with the left ulna like this. You see the 2 styloid processes opposite of each other up top, and the head of the radius fits in the radial notch right there. Okay, so that's a left radius. This is a right radius. Right, left. Okay? Alright. You have the carpal bones, and that's all you need to know about this is carpal bones. However, if you know each individual bones, they are safety questions. Alright, so you have 2 trap bones, trapezium and trapezoid. The trapezium is at the base of the thumb. So it rhymes. Trapezoid's right next to it. If you notice, the scaphoid is curved. You see how it's curved? It's curved like an S is curved. It's the only one that starts with an S. Scaphoid. Alright? So the scaphoid bone's curved like an S is curved. This is the capitate. If you turn it over, you can see it's the largest bone by far. It is the capitate. It is like the biggest bone, the capital bone. It's also big and bad, and it would decapitate the other bones.
Isn't that why they call it capitate? Because it's like the capital is the biggest.
Yes, but it would also decapitate the bones. This right here is the lunate, and like the moon, it's out there. It's crazy. It's loony. It's the farthest. It's farthest from the hand. This one right here, you gotta use your imagination. But that one's the hamate, and if you look close, it's shaped like a baked ham. And if you turn it over, it even has a handle to carry to Thanksgiving.
Whoa. Whoa.
This is the trichotrum. That's the pisiform. So how do you know those? Well, if you look at it this way, the trichotrum's being tricky and hiding the pisiform. And the pisiform's all angry because he's not being seen. So you have the tricky trichotrum and the pissy pisiform.
Wow.
You have the metacarpals. Metacarpal 1, metacarpal 2, metacarpal 3, metacarpal 4, metacarpal 5. Count from the thumb over. They're all metacarpals. The rest of them are phalanxes, but you have to give a direction and a number. So you have a proximal phalanx 1, distal phalanx 1. That's your thumb. Proximal phalanx 2, middle phalanx 2, distal phalanx 2. Proximal phalanx 3, middle phalanx 3, distal phalanx 3. Okay? Distal phalanx 4, middle phalanx 5, proximal phalanx 5. Make sense? Okay. Okay. This is the femur. This is the femur. Coach K had this snapped in half in a soccer game when he was playing in college or something.
He got kicked?
Somebody would go kick the ball and they hit it right there. And it snapped his femur.
Not drinking enough milk. That's all it is.
Man, I bet you. I think he said he passed out. I mean, you'd pass out with that kind of thing.
Why? It's your right here.
It's
a giant bone.
It's you talking to the beard. All right. So you have the head, greater trochanter, lesser trochanter. Now the head goes inside. I know this is left because the head goes inside, and the patellar groove is down into the front because that's where the patella fits your kneecap. All right. So the head's on the inside, right? So everything on the inside is medial. So that's a medial epicondyle, medial condyle. Lateral condyle, lateral epicondyle, opposite of the head. That make sense? And then the patellar groove. So this is a left, and that's a left. You're stealing my right. This is a right. Got it? Okay. This is a patella. You need to know that separate. You don't have to know right or left. This is the calcaneus, which is part of the foot. You need to know that separate, but you don't have to know right or left. And this is the talus, which you need to know separate, but you don't need to know right or left, okay? Let's go to this is the tibia. Two parts on tibia you need to know. Tibial tuberosity, which is that bump right below your kneecap. And this is the medial malleolus. Now, since this is the medial malleolus, it indicates, okay, that's on the inside, right? So, you're looking at it like this, medial malleolus, tibial tuberosity, okay? The medial malleolus is on the same side as your toe, so that's a left. Does that make sense? Okay, that's a left. Whereas the right one is the opposite, okay?
So the inside.
It's on the inside, correct. This is the fibula. Do not put fibia, fibula, tibia. You don't have to know right or left on the fibula, but you do have to know the head from the lateral malleolus, which fits opposite of the medial malleolus. Now, looking at them, it's a little difficult, but if you feel them, there's a definite difference. The head is thicker all the way around, whereas the lateral malleolus is flatter. It's thick this way, but flat this way. Does that make sense? So lateral malleolus, head. The foot hurt. All right, so you have the calcaneous and talus, which you need to know separate. Okay, talus is what the tibia sits on. Calcaneous is your heel. The rest of these are tarsal bones, but for safety questions, I'll ask them about individually. If you just put tarsal bone, you're good. Okay, but if you put the name of the bone, then it will replace another one. So you have navicular. You have the cuneiforms. You have the medial, intermediate, and lateral cuneiform, and you have the cuboid. Okay, and I think the navicular navigates the cuneiforms: medial, intermediate, lateral cuneiform, and the cuboid. These are metatarsals, just like the metacarpals. Okay, so metatarsal number 1, metatarsal number 2, metatarsal number 3, and the toes are exactly like the fingers. So you have proximal phalanx 1, distal phalanx 1, proximal phalanx 2, middle phalanx 2, distal phalanx 2. Okay? All right.
That's easy.
Yeah, very easy.
Good.
Aren't you ready? Okay. Okay, cranium, right here. Same as the lobes of the brain. Same thing. So it's really, really easy, okay? So you have the frontal bone, which covers the frontal lobe, okay, of the brain. Parietal bones, okay. Occipital bone. That's fitting on top of the skull like this, so this is also the frontal bone. And back here, that's also the occipital bone, okay? You have 4 sutures that you need to know. One, you can't see very well here, but I promise you, you'll be able to see on the test, okay? This line right here is the coronal suture, separating like a coronal cut, right? Separating front from back. This is the sagittal suture, and the sagittal suture separates right and left. And this is the lambdoid suture. Lambdoid. Now the one suture you can't see right now is this line that kind of separates. It'll be a line right here. Come on, get in there. Anyway, it'll be a line that separates. That's your point. Just kidding. It'd be a line that separates the temporal bone, which covers the temporal lobe, from the parietal. So it's kind of a line that comes up through here, and you can see it right here. It's called the squamous suture. Okay? Alright, and you see it on the illustration right there. Squamous suture. This is the temporal bone right here. Okay? This is the zygomatic bone. And then this bone right in here is the sphenoid. Okay? Say that with me. Sphenoid. There you go. Sphenoid, zygomatic, temporal bone. Now, this is the mastoid process. It's a bone right behind your ear. Mastoid process. That's the external auditory meatus. Okay. There are 2 safety questions here. This extension from here to about little more than midway right here, that's the zygomatic process because it extends to the zygomatic bone. And the little extension here on this half is called the temporal process because it extends to the temporal bone. Okay, so temporal process, temporal bone, zygomatic process, zygomatic bone. Okay, all right. Okay, so frontal bone. Now this will be off, by the way, on the test. This will be a station by itself. Frontal bone, nasal bone, zygomatic again. This little, see that perpendicular plate right there? Just call that the ethmoid plate. Technically, it's the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone, but that's a safety question, okay? Perpendicular ethmoid plate, that's the vomer. The vomer is also located right here, okay? So vomer. This right here is the maxilla bone. All right, your upper jaw is your maxilla. Maxilla, vomer, ethmoid plate, zygomatic, nasal, frontal. Now, there's 3 holes that you need to know. Okay, do you remember that the eye socket's called the orbit or the orbital? All right, there's these notches on the upper part of the orbit. It's called supraorbital foramen. Supra means above. Okay, supraorbital foramen. This hole down here is the infraorbital foramen. Okay, infraorbital foramen, supraorbital foramen. All right, and the hole back there, you see that? You see that circular hole on the medial side of the orbit? My probe sticking through one of them? Okay, that's the optic foramen. Okay, it's not the slits right here on the outer side of it, it's medial. That's where the optic nerve goes. And the optic chiasm sits right in here. Okay, so optic nerve, or optic foramen, supraorbital foramen, infraorbital foramen. Infra means below. Okay. Right here, this is still part of the maxilla bone, but that part right there is called the palatin process. Palatin process extends to this bone right here, which is called the palatin bone. Okay, palatin process, palatin bone. You have the vomer again. This little big indention right here is called the mandibular fossa. It's what's going to connect to your mandibular condyle. Okay, mandibular fossa, styloid process. Styloid process, you have one on the ulna and the radius as well. Looks like a stylus. This is the mastoid process again. This is the foramen magnum. Think of Magnum 57. Boom. Shoot a big old hole in your skull. That's where your spinal cord and your brainstem meet. This is the occipital bone again. On either side of the foramen magnum is the occipital condyles. Occipital condyles. Okay. There's 3 more safety questions down here. This hole right here is called the foramen ovale. Foramen ovale. If you move from this hole and go straight back, you'll find a very, very deep circular crevice, and that's the carotid canal. That's where the carotid artery goes. And then back behind that, there's the jugular foramen. And the jugular foramen is where the jugular veins exit. Okay? Alright?
Those are
Safety questions, yeah. This is the mandible. This is the mandibular condyle, which fits in the mandibular fossa. This is the coronoid process. Coronoid process, mandibular condyle. That's the mental foramen. Okay? Mental foramen, mental means chin, right? Coronoid process, remember you have the coronoid process in the ulna as well. And then mandibular condyle. Okay?
For the safety questions, does that mean it's safety for like every station, or is it just that station?
Whichever ones are highlighted, if I ask about those questions on the test, now I ask about a few. Okay?
So,
If
but
you
you can
get
only
it,
say for
if you leave it blank, it doesn't hurt you.
yeah,
If you get it right, it's not bonus, but it will replace another wrong one.
the wrong one for that section.
No, wrong one for
For
all
everything.
of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.